with less than a week until Trump's inauguration, Trump, or rather the deal with Hamas, Israeli deal with Hamas, is as the closest that we ever, it is said it's closest that we've ever seen. And it looks like, or at least we have some, allegedly, there are some reports that Trump himself, or specifically his envoy, has actually been pressuring Netanyahu into making the deal. So today we'll cover that alleged pressuring, and we'll also cover the deal itself, since it will most likely, if it does go through, it will happen before Trump's inauguration. I think most likely, if we don't have a deal before Trump gets inaugurated, I think it will be much more difficult to go with it afterwards. So we will also talk about that. Joining me today is Marco and Richard. Hey guys.
Hi, good afternoon, good morning, wherever.
Yeah, and some people in the chat are saying Sam Harris was spot on regarding Trump support for Israel. So if anybody knows what that means, please let me know because I don't have time to check now. But I'd be interested in hearing. Uh,
In some areas, nobody can know, can they?
is Sam Harris like skeptic in that way? I don't. Well, right, because he's well, that's for another day. Um, But yeah, I mean, Marco, what do you think about? So apparently, from the report, it seems like Witkoff, which is the Trump's Middle East envoy, he was meeting with Netanyahu on Saturday. While they were talking about meeting, basically said Netanyahu has said it's Sabbat or Shabbat, whichever way it's supposed to be pronounced. Basically saying he can only meet in the evening. Witkoff was like, I don't care. We just have to meet, and apparently has also been pressuring Netanyahu into making a deal. And sort of the way Witkoff was described by many people is that sort of, hardcore, not a diplomat, like a hardcore businessman, which would sort of make sense with this type of rhetoric. Basically, we're not big fan of religion, and that is probably a dumb reason. Meaning like, just because there's Sabbath, it not meeting, but sort of, putting in the context of who Netanyahu is, what Israel is, and sort of acting like this as a diplomat sort of speaks of, I think, something much different. But yeah, I mean, Marco, what do you think?
Well, I think that any deal, whatever the terms, would be a rotten deal for not only the hostages and Israel as a whole, but also for future hostages or future situations. And this is particularly bad, the deal, because it's a rush deal. It's a deal that, from Trump's point of view, his administration doesn't want to have to deal with this kind of issue. So clearly, he's trying to bat it away very quickly. That's why he said that if Hamas didn't release the hostages, all hell would be unleashed. And this meant to say, reach a deal because we're going to put the might of the US war machine behind it in order to remove you and release the hostages. And at the same time, it's a rotten deal because it's actually brokered by the Biden administration, which, despite having this super stupid and pointless three-prong plan back in the summer, they never really cared much about the future of Israel. And especially now, they're trying to push the deal because their days are literally numbered. They are like -6 to the end of their administration. So they want to show that they managed to do a deal, managed to solve the situation, and they want to leave the office having this kind of very poor record, to be honest, if you ask me. But and we'll discuss the terms of the deal later on. But the whole thing is just short of disgraceful, really.
Yeah,
Moment.
I'll just quickly jump in because someone in the chat has had the same idea that I did. Someone says, if a deal does happen, Daniel, please put Trump as Anakin's betrayal in a thumbnail. And I was actually thinking about that. You were the chosen one. It was said that you would destroy the sin, not join them. Bring balance to the force, not living in the darkness. But sorry for jumping in, Richard. What do you think about Trump's betrayal? Let's say. I we'll go later if what I was thinking about this before this happened. But yeah, Richard, what do you think?
Okay, well, I'll get to Trump in a minute, but let's just talk about being on the brink of a deal. I mean, you're on the brink of a horrendous mistake. You're on the brink of sacrificing a key principle. The principle is justice. You're sanctioning taking human lives as pawns in the form of kidnap and using them to negotiate whatever you want for anyone to do that in the future. If this is sanctioned by the US, by Israel, again, as of course we've had it's not the first time we've had a deal. There was a deal in November 23, of course, and that is tragic for frankly for all of us, to be honest, because that is the absolute last thing you want to do if you want to demonstrate the difference between good and evil, is to fudge the difference. For the good to say, okay, we will have to concede that our own people, their lives are, have to be traded in the way that you choose the enemy that abducted them, and that is appalling. So there's that side of it. Then the Trump side of it. What was Trump ever likely to do anything particularly different? I mean, I think a lot of this comes from the all hell will break out message from Trump if the hostages aren't released before I'm president, and whether that's focused minds, whether that is empty rhetoric, whether that is a tool that he's used in order to get it this far. It's hard to say. You can argue a case for each of those things, I think. But of course, the way that this whole thing is being run is about treating your ally almost like your enemy, backing them into a corner, using force against them, making it impossible for them to take the right path, and therefore, how can you distinguish between an ally and an enemy if you're going to treat your enemy as somebody who has to agree with your foot on their throat? And that's what this feels like.
Yeah, so now going more into the deal. So it was earlier, it was said that Hamas has accepted the deal. Now, I think you guys have told me that it sounds like Blinken said Hamas actually hasn't officially accepted this deal, so it might be different. Although apparently I've heard that the representatives of the Islamic Palestinian Jihad are also basically part of the negotiations and will be part, which this is the first time I'm hearing about it directly. I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if they weren't somewhat involved in the negotiations of the past, as they are also a part of Gaza and any deal that would have to happen if Hamas persevered, or even if Hamas wasn't allowed to sort of continue after the deal, Islamic Palestinian Jihad would still be there, and you would still have to do something with that. So I think there is a big discussion about. Well, first, someone answered me about the Sam Harris. So apparently, he debated Ben Shapiro on the Free Press with Barry Weiss, and he said that Trump is the kind of person to dump Israel if Iran offers him a golf course. And well, that's pretty funny. I don't think that's necessarily what is going on here. I don't think that what is happening here is really that he is betraying Israel in the way of like giving in to like pressure of another nation, or sort of giving in to the benefit of another nation. I think Trump just really doesn't want to deal with anything when it comes to this. He doesn't want to deal with. That's why the line we've mentioned about him, like all hell would break loose, or whatever the line was, um th- that all hell would break loose. Again, that's a great thing if you would actually do that. Basically, well, here is problematic, because what is that saying? What are you trying to say? You're not a president yet, so you have no sort of strong power. You have no way of enforcing anything, because you're president elect. You don't have the full power. Even if he wanted to go in Gaza with soldiers, he would have to wait until January 20th for his inauguration to do anything. So I think the purpose of that was really to induce some kind of a deal. That's why I think we do see more pressure coming in from Trump and or Trump upcoming administration, technically, going on right now. Is he really doesn't seem to be wanting to deal with any of it. So that's why, if we are to ever hope for something better in Israel, I think this is, the ball is sort of in Netanyahu's court right now, is that he has to wait until the inauguration at the least, because I think a lot of things will change by then. I mean, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I wouldn't go down the route as a betrayal of Israel because, as you mentioned, Trump was never going to save Israel. He never really promised to make sure that the situation in the Middle East would have been solved once and for all. But he wanted to stop the hostility, he wanted to stop the war, he wanted to stop the situation that we have at the moment. And of course, by doing this, I mean, Trump knows that the position of president of the United States, whether you are just president-elect or president properly in charge, carries quite a weight. And he knows that being the president-elect promises something, which means that something will have a different weight from just an empty promise from generic politicians. That's why Trump is using this kind of rhetoric even before he takes office again. Well, first of all, he knows exactly what being in office means, so he's got some experience behind. But the fact is making these kind of statements because he knows that the way that his words will carry. That's why by saying that deliberate phrase, all hell will break loose, he never meant to put America army behind it or weapons or whatever. But he knew that by saying that, the rats in Hamas will scatter from the sewers and start thinking, oh shit, we're in trouble. In a way, he's used the same rhetoric with Canada. He's used the same rhetoric. He's doing it with the same thing with Greenway, but
Greenland.
Greenland. But by using these very hyperbolic statements, he's really shaking the politicians on the other side to the bone and shake them into action, into listen to what he's saying and to agree on what he says. We've seen how many leaders across the world have been scattering as soon as they've seen that Trump has won. So he knows he can push at this point, just making a veiled threat, which is not necessarily meant to be a negative thing, but just making a threat now. It's going to be enough for him to soften the deal on the other side. And he knows this very well. He's a bull in a china shop kind of businessman. He knows how to carry out a deal. But this is also the point where you see what happens if you haven't got a proper principle, a philosophy behind what you're doing. By just closing the hostility, shutting down the aftermath of October the 7th, actually you end up in the long term damaging Israel. You end up allowing the bad side, Hamas and Islamic Jihad. I mean, honestly, what kind of distinguished terrorists are they to sit around the table with? It's just balmy. The whole idea itself is just mad. But doing what he's doing is just literally is just trying to get the problem go away so he can focus on America and America only without being distracted by events abroad. But again, this is not a long-term solution. This is just a patch.
Yeah, I mean that phrase, the idea that Islamic Jihad or any whether it was an organization or a concept should be part of a deal, anywhere, at any time, is abhorrent, and it should be called out as such. I think what I would consider a betrayal would be if there isn't a physical attack on Iran's ability to create nuclear weapons after Trump is in charge. Because without that, I would consider it a betrayal of what I've been led to believe is the intent and will be necessary to ensure any form of peace for America itself, for the Middle East, and frankly the world, quite honestly. Now, whether that's going to happen or not remains to be seen. I'm still hoping for it. However, this hostage side of things, I think, is quite different, and my expectations were always different. However, I do think that that Trump is quite keen to get this done under the Biden time, so, with his use of his threatening term, threatening yet vague, of course, so that it can mean whatever you want it to mean, whenever you want it to mean it. But to get this done under the Biden deal, so that any future repercussions from it, he can then say, "Well, that was done before I became president." So he can play both sides by using that technique, and of course, that's one of the worst elements of him. Despite the fact that I think he's obviously, as I said before, I think he was far preferable to Kamala. But anyway, that's now decided. So we are where we are. So, well, what's going to happen here? Are we going to see this deal? And of course, it's the hideous nature of everything that is trickling out that may be contained within this deal that I think makes it even worse, because it's properly trying to squeeze the maximum benefit for Hamas out of every single individual life that's been abducted and held in captivity for 15, 16 months, isn't it? So, and that is, and you're complicit in that. You're being complicit in what's happened there, in that entire concept, and you're sanctioning it for the future. It beggars belief. I mean, I know we've talked about the hostage deal in a number of different ways on a number of different shows and said the same core message each time. But when you actually start hearing the details about how how Hamas is intending to trade those chips of people's lives for maximum relinquishing of Israel's position, and at what cost, it beggars belief. It really does.
Yeah, and as someone in the chat says, Trump wants to trade 33 Israeli hostages for 666 Palestinian hostages. I think technically it would be 660. And we'll go to the details of the deal in a bit. I just want to cover a few more things of the part. Okay, no, I won't go there. Basically, what I was thinking, well, first of all, because you mentioned Trump's rhetoric when it comes to Canada, and we'll most likely do a show on it tomorrow, so we'll talk about it more. But just one thing, for one takeaway from that sort of thing, I think people should take away is like, it's still not a good thing. When, if let's say, I was with you guys in London some time ago. If I said, hey guys, do you want to grab a breakfast? And you guys say no. Well, but I won't. So if you don't, I'll kill you. That's not a negotiated tactic. That's not like an acceptable level to be at. So put down your tariffs or I'll invade your country is not what I would want from a Western dealer in any way, shape, or form. But that's, again, like a separate thing, unless you guys want to comment on that.
Yeah, I accept that the threat is not put down in those kind of words. Come on.
No, he said nothing is off the table.
I know, but he didn't say we're gonna invade. It's just bluster from Trump again.
He said it would be a 51st state. What else would that mean? It means like peacefully will coexist together.
Yeah. But yeah.
You don't have to defend that. Come on, like this is not something that like you know.
I'm just saying that accusing Trump of invading Canada is preposterous. Come on, nobody.
He says that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
He says nothing is off the table. He is, and people who listen to him also do that. They straight up like act jingoistically. It's like insane. Even like what's his name, Ben Shapiro is like now almost like into this rhetoric. It's kind of insane. But that's for maybe a different topic. So I'll just wrap up with. I think this was even before pretty much the election was also my biggest problem with Trump and sort of how he would be better for Israel. I'm not sure if we originally did an episode on this, but one idea that I think there was an article about and also people were talking about is that the big advantage that Netanyahu has with Biden in office, or potentially even with Kamala Harris in office, that he has this vision of like, hey, this is this American influence that like trying to be put on us, and and I'm your defender against you. And Likud, his party, and Netanyahu himself throughout the war has been pretty popular, and his popularity has increased anytime Biden administration has tried to put any sort of pressure on Netanyahu. And sort of my problem with sort of Trump in office, again, this is just a potential that can happen, is that since Trump is viewed as the pro-Israeli guy, Trump is viewed as the, someone who has Israeli interest in mind, or at least more than Biden or Harris, then basically this ability of Netanyahu will fall down, and therefore a deal paradoxically, a deal is more likely to be put through with Trump in office because it's viewed as like a pro-Israeli policy to have the deal go through than with Kamala or Biden in office, since it is viewed as like a sort of foreign pressure. Yeah, anything you guys like to add on that?
I mean, that's quite an interesting point, actually. I haven't thought about that. But yeah, definitely Trump is more like, the 20th is the limit. I'm not going to be willing to debate this. So he puts some pressure on Netanyahu as well. The only issue is that I hope Netanyahu was able to negotiate something with Trump, in respect to Iran, for example, because even today, a missile from the Houthis hit a house just on the border of the West Bank, just southwest of Jerusalem. I mean, Israel is constantly under barrage by these buffoons. And I hope Netanyahu actually trade. Okay, I'll agree to this deal. I know it's not in my interest, but if you support us against Iran, fine, I'll put up with it. Because even on the north border, I mean, Hezbollah is still there. Hezbollah is still active on the ground, and the IDF is still dealing with them. So this problem have not gone away. So I just hope Netanyahu was able to try and modify the terms to a more favorable for Israel as a whole. And again, the term itself is releasing 1,000 terrorists held in Israel's prisons in exchange of 33 hostages. I mean, the very same hostages that these animals actually took from Israel itself on October the 7th. So this is not a concession. This is taking advantage of the evil that they perpetrated on October 7th and making hay out of it. And of course, Israel is put under pressure in order to allow this to happen in the first place, which is morally reprehensible, and it's absolutely disgusting, because this guarantees that this kind of terrorists, whether Hamas or Palestinian Jihad or whatever, will carry on. And today there was a Blinken speech at the Atlantic Council, which is a NATO-related thing about the Middle East. And Blinken quite openly admitted that the Muslim world does not believe the atrocities of October 7 were perpetrated by Hamas. So this is us taking a few thousand years steps backwards and allowing these ridiculous people to actually set the agenda. And then he said stuff like he wants the Palestinian Authority to be involved in the Gaza Strip. It's like, dude, just move on, just disappear from the face of the planet, and let somebody that knows exactly what's good for Israel to decide what the situation should be. But this kind of push that the Biden administration and Blinken in particular have been trying to effectively put Israel on a losing foot, on a position where they are going to always be second fiddle to Hamas itself. It's just ludicrous. And to make this kind of statement a few days before your administration is out, this is just absolutely disgusting.
I think some of the things I've seen reported about this already are appalling as well. I mean, I've reports in the BBC who talk about the fact that the Gazans are delighted and excited about this prospect of this deal going through. For the first time, they've been this delighted and excited for 15 months. Delighted and excited to be able to trade human lives for what they want, and to encourage that in the future again. And of course, the idea that Hamas has been comprehensively defeated, and yet you're going to give them reinforcements, 1,000 reinforcements, 1,000 potential Sinwars, all terrorists who could perpetrate another October the 7th in the future, essentially, and many of them with long records in prison for over 15 years or some life sentences, and I can't believe that any country would accept it, let alone Israel, who have been doing such a good job in terms of fighting the evil that exists ever since the Pages incident, ever since all of the fight back of Hezbollah and everything. They've been making such a good strides in terms of correcting where good and evil lies, and yet here you are at this point sacrificing everything for the sake of what? Some super short-term gain. The only thing that I can agree, stress were out of what Marco said there is it to do with Iran? Is it to do with making sure that jointly with the US they can see off Iran's potential to support in the future? Because that's just about the only thing that holds any weight in terms of even remotely starting to balance the scales of such a decision. But even that is its own form of pragmatism.
Yeah, and even that, I don't really see it. Like if I really, let's say I'm a U.S. president, if I really want to go against Iran, what benefit am I getting from making a deal with Hamas? So I literally cannot see anything there. And yeah, I wanna just mention this one thing about, I don't know what to really call it, but sort of almost like a problem of being in peace, because basically with after October 7, Israel was able to finally take actions against Hezbollah, against the Houthis, against Hamas, against Iran, against Syria in many cases. And sort of unfortunately, because of what happened on October 7, but that was only possible because of what happened on October 7, because Israel had now the courage to actually fight its enemies. And I think with Iran, it's a similar thing. Once they get the nuclear arsenal, that's it. The game is over in a sense. You can no longer really threaten the existence of the Iranian regime. And so the problem, if this deal goes through, and let's say the peace in Gaza is made, the fact is there most likely will not be any conflict before Iran reaches the nuclear arsenal. And so then the only thing we could rely on is that when there are reports that Iran is close, that Israel or America or Trump will do something against it, which again is pretty unsure. At least when it comes to American public, they don't support any actions, or at least I think, well, Trump, I'm trying to remember now back, but I think Trump said that, I think he spoke more about Biden, the fact that Biden sort of forbid Netanyahu from targeting the oil sites and the nuclear sites. He criticized that move. So if something like that, if Israel was to strike Iran again, then we at least from his rhetoric we would know that Trump would support it. But that's not enough. Israeli sort of responding after Iran does something is not enough. An actual destruction of the Iranian regime is the only thing that would sort of bring the peace in the Middle East. And so that's my biggest problem with, if this deal does come through, is what's going to happen then with Iran. So that's sort of my biggest worry. Just one thing I want to quickly mention. Someone says the Greenland population has expressed their wish to join the US. It would be smart to acquire it. This was literally what Russia has been using to like annex Crimea and eastern parts of like Ukraine. So and like Greenland is in NATO. Like we don't have to like stand behind like these things that Trump says, and like you can support Trump without like standing behind these like insane statements. So I just want to make that clear. But as I said, we'll most likely cover it on tomorrow's video much more. Do you guys want to go to the actual hostage deal or anything to say beforehand?
Well, if you were for me, the deal wouldn't be there in the first place. But yeah, let's talk about it.
So yeah, as almost always, it's three phases. The hostage release, Hamas will release 33 hostages focusing on vulnerable groups such as children, women, the elderly, and here it also says female soldiers, but I'm not sure if that's true because I know with IDF, soldiers, it was sort of put out that they would be the last ones to go. But maybe with specifically female soldiers, it might come sooner. Then it would be the prisoner exchange. Basically, in return, Israel will release hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. Ratio is reported as being 30. So for every single hostage, they get 30 terrorists back. Which in this case would mean 660. Then there is a ceasefire, a 42-day cessation of hostilities will be implemented. Of course, humanitarian aid, more aid will come in. And troop withdrawal. Basically, the Israeli forces will slowly start withdrawing from certain areas, enabling Palestinians to return to their homes. And now, in the past or in the last, let's say, few months, when we heard about the deal, what Netanyahu has been saying is that he would continue the fighting even if there is a deal, even if there is such a deal accepted. And now we are only in the first phase, and it already starts with IDF withdrawing. And my question is, so Israel, and if we go through the all phases, IDF will be completely out. So now my question is, so IDF withdraws and then Netanyahu will engage back into the war? Nothing like that will happen. And I believe with this deal specifically, already some of the people in his cabinet or in his coalition, namely Ben-Gvir, has been threatening that if this is accepted, he will basically get out. Now, this is not enough, most likely, to mean anything, especially since if such a deal will be accepted and let's say a lot of people leave from his coalition, I would imagine that people from the opposition would come in to support him. So basically, whether Netanyahu accepts or doesn't accept his deal, I don't think he is basically, I don't think his coalition will break apart. I think either way, there will be enough support for him to come through. So I really hope that Netanyahu sort of, he does know what needs to be done, but if he will have really the courage to actually do what needs to be done. I mean, Marco, what do you think about, well, both the first phase of a deal and if this idea of Netanyahu going back in still stands?
Well, first of all, the deal itself. I mean, we're talking about among the 1,000 terrorists released, people who are who receive a life sentence. So we are talking about serious first-grade terrorists. We're not talking about people who stole a chicken. We're talking about people who went out there, organized and executed the murder of multiple Israelis. So this is the first thing, and you are exchanging for some innocent civilians who have been kept in captivity for over a year now, because they were taken by the savages on October the 7th. And the same savages are now dictating the terms. This is just, it really fills me with anger thinking about this. But also the deal shows this is brokered by, okay, the push, the pressure comes from the incoming administration, but you can tell by the nature of this deal that Biden administration is behind this, because they see a deal as putting a lid on October the 7th. Again, in that stupid speech that Blinken made today, he kind of makes the point that Netanyahu and Israel have gone way beyond the response from October the 7th. So they see once you kill Sinwar, you should have stopped. So they see this as a single event that can be closed down, and once you kill the baddies, the organize the whole thing, you're fine. Well, no. At no point Israel will be any safer when this deal comes through, because Richard pointed out, you released potentially 1,000 Sinwars. Sinwar was released in a similar deal with this, like this. And then we see what he went on doing. So by going down this route, the Biden administration is actually not making Israel's life any easier. It's actually making it more dangerous. And until you get rid of Hamas altogether, and certainly don't replace it with a Palestinian Authority, you're gonna perpetrate this. There's gonna be a period of calm up to a point, but then there's gonna be another October 7th. If anything else, because these people are promised to do it. They want to do it. That's why they see that they're on the planet in the first place to kill Jews, to destroy Israel. They don't care if they die. Sinwar himself made the point that civilian casualty, unnecessary occurrences. It's a sacrifice that they're willing to take, the life of innocent civilians, in order to perpetrate the cause, i.e., destroying Israel. They will never give up. They will never stop killing Jews, and they're doing it on daily basis. And the mention about the point about Iran. Well, the Trump administrator, together with the administration, together with Israel, will have more than one chance to hit Iran on the head, because the Houthis are not stopping, Hezbollah are not stopping. So at some point they're gonna overreach, and Israel will get what the Israeli, sorry, the Iranian regime will get what is due, finally.
I mean, look at how we described the first part of that deal, how you described it there. You talked about children, women, and the elderly being in the first group. And, our sympathies immediately think, oh, children, women, the elderly. These are the same children, women, and the elderly that were taken in the first place by the same people you're now rewarding. They're the same children, women, and the elderly who've been kept there for 15 months. And we're supposed to carve off to one side all that context and just focus on, aren't they being generous now? Aren't they being kind now to children, women, and the elderly? No, they are not. And if you consider the fact that this is the Biden deal announced in May, being done at the last minute, it's not like, although we can talk about the fact that Trump is coming in and that's given the impetus to getting this done before the 20th. It's still got all the core elements of a deal that Biden and his administration came up with in May, that Netanyahu rejected, and that was hideous at the time. We spoke about it at the time. We said so at the time, and now it's just being put through in the dying days of his administration. And this point that you were making about if Israel withdraws in the 42-day period, would it come back again? Well, I mean, obviously, the whole point from Hamas's point of view is that the deal makes Israel militarily weaker, and that at the same time, Hamas retains more hostage tokens to use in the next round of ensuring concessions from Israel once they have made themselves militarily weaker. Why would you agree to that? Unless you're a fool in the first place, or you're I can see no reason why you would agree to that if you've got your head screwed on and any sense of morality.
I was about to comment on something, but now it completely flew out of my head. So yeah, so we have this. Well, I'll just mention the second phase. We don't have to go through the whole thing, but basically the second phase, the negotiations will commence on day 16 of the ceasefire, aiming for the release of all remaining Israeli hostages. And also discussions will start happening about the full Israeli military withdrawal, as well as working on some after the war solution to the governing in Gaza, if it means Hamas will stay or if it means Hamas will go away and something else will replace it. We'll have to see. The negotiations will happen. Negotiations can fall through, so we might see this deal go through, and then sort of Israel going back on it and basically going back into Gaza, which is, I think, sort of, unfortunately, the best thing we can hope for at the moment. Oh, I know what I wanted to say. So, yeah, this idea about, Hamas being pressured, I think a good number to look at is the ratio of released. When the first deal happened, I think the ratio was 1-2 or 1-3 or something like that. Basically, for every Israeli hostage, Hamas only got to terrorists. And now it's 1-30. So who has the upper hand in negotiations? Who has the upper hand? And again, Hamas will always have the upper hand in negotiations. It's because they don't care about the lives of their own people. They don't care if the deal If the deal goes through, they'll be happy because they can get some of their terrorists back, they can get some of their power back, and they can continue fighting against Israel. And if the deal doesn't go through, then they still know that Israel will have a pressure on it, and they still know they can continue fighting against Israel, especially since Israel isn't fully committed to defending itself, isn't fully committed to destroying Hamas. So Hamas is always winning. Hamas, as long as as long as the good is willing to compromise, as long as the good is willing to submit to some parts of the evil, or is willing to basically undermine itself, then yeah, the evil is always profiting. The evil is always winning, and this is what Hamas is doing right now. It's almost whatever they do, they are winning. So that's the sort of the biggest unfortunate thing of this whole ordeal. Someone says you cannot defeat an ideology. Well, tell that to the German Nazis and Japanese Shintoists. I'm sure a bunch of them are, well, a few of them are still sort of running around, but we defeated the hell out of those ideologies. But we didn't defeat the ideology of altruism, and that's why Israel is still unable to fully defend itself. So, I mean, Marco, any sort of last thoughts? I'll quickly check the news if we
Yeah,
have any sort of breaking stuff. But
the tragedy that, as you said, Hamas knows you can always win in the end because when everything fails militarily, they can always claim, okay, let's deal with a ceasefire now. And in the end, you confirm to them that taking hostages is something worthwhile for them to do. The next time they go into Israel, killing another 1,000 Israelis, they know that taking hostages back is worthwhile. So you don't push back on this. And also, frankly, for what is it now? 13, 14 months, 14, 15 months, there's been a war. Over 1,800 soldiers have died on the Israeli side. For what? Just to buy time? So you could allow Hamas to survive? This feels like a betrayal for for the families of the victim or the soldiers who died during this campaign. And I can understand that the 33 families of the hostages returned will feel incredibly excited and happy. But this is too high a price to pay in order to get the belows back. You have to be in a situation where Hamas and any other person will ever try and hurt a single Israeli on a planet, because they will have to learn that if they do that again, they're going to be wiped out of the face of the planet. And until we do that, until we teach this kind of savages that their actions have consequences, and the consequences will be their departure and then meeting up with Allah or whatever other fanciful creature they believe in, that's got this thing will gonna continue. And by telling terrorists, come on, you're on the right road, keep taking hostages because that pays back. This is not a solution. This is not a lasting solution.
Jews and Israelis everywhere, right across the world, will be extra victims, under an extra cloud and threat of being taken hostage if hostage taking of them is rewarded in this manner. And everybody who thinks solely of the families who would be getting their loved ones back now needs to think about the families who are yet to have theirs taken and would have theirs taken if the principle is sanctioned that hostage taking works, as we've said many times. Now, I think, and what's worse about some of the details I've heard about this deal, and it's reported in slightly different ways in different places, is breaking it down into super micro groups. So even that 33 that we were talking about in the first phase might be done in 3 at a time, 4 at a time, based on Israel conceding to withdrawing to certain areas. All of that is even more horrendous in terms of how much you are cheapening and using human lives, and of course equating where Israel is in terms of trying to fight this war and the fact the hostages were taken in the first place, and making them sound like they're even positions, which of course they're morally completely not. It is the hostage taking and the actions of October the 7th that have caused and justified uh, the response that the Israelis have taken, it should have been stronger and it should have been swifter and faster and harder, but in trying to prevent it from ever happening again, which this certainly doesn't do. And I think some of the other details about, occupying the Philadelphia corridor for again always a short period, so that Hamas can then say, well, now we need it all. And of course, this supposed buffer zone of like 800 meters between on the east and northern borders for again a short period, so that Hamas can then argue they have it back again when there shouldn't be a Hamas at this point to talk to anyone, frankly. And X-ray machines to X-ray passing donkey carts and missile trucks that go through the border, supposedly run by the Egyptians. That's one of the features of this deal that I've also heard. Well, we've seen how porous those borders have been when run by Egyptians in the past. That's what allowed so much weaponry and tunnel making equipment to enter into Gaza and to create the kind of infrastructure which Israel has been systematically trying to remove ever since. So do we really want to start that process over again? And again, that would be for a short period before it will be back to October the 6th in any way possible. And that just shouldn't be conceded to. Really shouldn't.
Yeah, so we have about less than a week left before Trump's inauguration, which I think if the deal goes through, we'll most likely hear about it before that date. I would be really surprised if like the deal happens like 3 days after his inauguration, because again, I think the sort of the pressures right now are on Netanyahu to make the deal, are on also Hamas to accept the deal, because I think now they are getting the best deal possible. They can gain the most at the current pace because they both have the Biden's sort of base for the deal and sort of Trump's implicit agreement, or at least wanting of this deal to be done. So now really is the sort of, yeah, we'll need a lot of resistance from Netanyahu, resistance from Israelis to this deal, for it to really not go through. And if it does fall through, we might have one more chance when the next part of the negotiations happen for Netanyahu to try to step away from it. Which again, even in that case, Trump can play a big part because he can both pressure Netanyahu to get the deal, or basically say Hamas has broken the deal, which they will. They will break the ceasefire the day off. They have they have no reason. They did it last time. They have no reason to really uphold it in any way. They might have more reason to uphold it now if they believe that breaking it might convince Trump in some way. But we've seen that it hasn't done anything with the Biden administration or even Netanyahu himself when the ceasefire happened. So we'll have to see a lot of unknowns. So the next week is going to be eventful, but we're live every day. No reality show today. We had to postpone it, but tomorrow there will be another episode of the Daily Objective and the reality show. So make sure to check that. Simply subscribe and click the notification bell so you know about it. Thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye.